What am I supposed to say? The intro?
You're gonna introduce us. We're live now.
Okay.
Now we're recording. So,
Well, my name's Patrick,
my name's Arlo.
and this is
The world's worst
Adventure Bike Show.
podcast.
Amen.
All right, we've got a few topics for everybody today, and Patrick and I are bored on a Friday night. We're just gonna test this thing out. This is our pilot episode. We're gonna talk about some motorcycles. What are you thinking?
I think it's going to be fun.
Let's do it. So, one of the first topics that we have on here is what is the reason that you ride an adventure bike versus just a street bike?
Well, I can tell you the exact reason for that, but I want you to go first. I want to hear your reason because I've never asked you before.
My reason, I would say, my reason is because you guys ride adventure bikes and I wanted to ride with you. So as silly as that sounds, it works because if your buddies are riding off-road, guess what? You're going to want to ride off-road. So
That's a good reason.
Yeah.
And that's fun. So mine is partially that. My cousin Backer, who is the main orchestrator of our adventure riding and group rides, and he puts on his own rides, and he's been doing this longer than us. He always told me I should get an adventure bike, and I never did. But then one day I realized that where we live, you can be on the best road ever to ride a street bike, a sport bike, a cruiser, whatever it is, but it always ends in a dirt road. And every time I got to that dirt road or that rock road or trail or whatever, wherever the road ended, it sucked, and I had to take my little sport bike and try to turn around. I'm not even a sport bike guy, but I had motorcycles and or whatever kind of bike I had. And this is the part where I had to turn around, and having always rode dirt bikes and grown up with dirt bikes and done some racing and different things, I just wanted to keep going. So eventually I got tired of having a motorcycle that I never rode because all the good roads ended in me turning around. I thought, I think Backer's right. And the answer is have a motorcycle that's fun on those roads, and then a motorcycle that when you hit the dirt, when you get to the rocks, you just keep going, and then it's twice as fun. So that's how, with Backer's nudge of always telling me I should get one, and then learning that where we live is more, it's better to have an adventure bike. That's how I got into it.
and we're in southern Indiana, so the roads could be dirt, they could be rock, they could be
Chip and
asphalt,
seal, concrete.
chip and seal. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So they vary in all sorts of conditions. And honestly, riding off road and riding not necessarily off road, but riding on non-paved roads is probably the best way to put it. In my opinion, it's more fun. You just don't know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah.
You might be going 60 and heading straight into a 90-degree corner, and there's trouble ahead.
Yeah,
So,
I experienced you doing that right alongside me before, and I didn't think you were gonna make it.
yep. Got
But
in the
you
grass and
Yeah,
good to
good
go.
to go. Yeah, I think one of the best feelings ever is riding a rock road at like 60 or 70 miles an hour. Keep in mind, this is on private property only, and we would never do this on public roadways or in the unsafe manner. But with the bike floating around underneath you, and it's amazing. It just feels amazing. Like it feels like you're doing the Dakar rally or something, and like letting the bike work and move around underneath you, and there's no traction, and the bike's moving around, and you're in the soft gravel, and you've got to slow down, you've got to speed up. It's really nice. I enjoy that. That's probably my favorite part of adventure riding, aside from the adventure of just going out with your buddies and having a good time.
And once you hop on an adventure bike, and you ride with someone who is not on one, not on an adventure bike, maybe they're on a cruiser or a tour or whatever they're on, the limitations for them far greater than the limitations for the adventure bike rider. And one thing I would argue is that, some people be like, well, the power, I think they can go just as fast. I mean, you ride a couple different bikes. I mostly ride the 890 Adventure R. It's a 2022 model. It absolutely flies, and I feel like I could keep up with most people, even on asphalt. So
Yes, I agree. I mean, most people's riding level, and what most people do on motorcycles, an adventure bike can pretty much do anything. The thing that blows my mind about adventure bikes, like when someone that doesn't know anything about adventure bikes, I tell them that I ride a motorcycle that's made for the street, that I can drive down a trail in the woods and go over logs and rocks and ride it in a creek. And I can drive 70 miles an hour on the interstate to the next place and go drive around in the rocks and then drive home on the same bike. That's how I explain it to people who don't understand. And to me, that's amazing that I can do that on the same bike. And then the other thing is I have a T7. It's fantastic and I love it. And I also have a Multistrada. And I really think that it can almost do anything that a sport bike can do. And it can almost do anything that an adventure bike can do. And that, to me, that's unbelievable.
You bought that bike for doing a little bit longer trips, but maybe talk about why you enjoy that bike as an adventure bike, because it's not. I mean, the Multistrada is, it's a touring bike, right? I mean, that's the way it's marketed.
I don't know. In Italian, it means many roads. So it's made to, it's basically like a sport bike DNA, but they've made it a little off-roady, and
sure,
it seems like it shouldn't work, but it does. So like it can ride on rock roads and gravel roads fine. Really the only limitation to it is it doesn't have quite as much ground clearance as an adventure bike. And it has, it's a little more vulnerable, like in the engine area if you were to hit a big rock or something. But I mean, I've rode this thing on dirt roads, on trails, through creeks, things like that. And then I've also jumped hills on private land with really long roads at 145 miles an hour, which is unbelievable. I mean, to take a motorcycle that you can ride through the dirt, in creeks, in the rain, and then it corners like a street bike, and it's comfortable and it has heated grips. It weighs less than the T7 and it has 150 horsepower, I think, in that range. It's unbelievable, and it's usable power. We'll get into that.
What year is that
stuff
bike?
Later. I think it's a 2009, and it has great electronics, like the ABS work. So the traction control works.
It's not one of the new Ducatis, because I'm actually on their website right now, and I know that they, obviously they have the Desert X, but the Multistrada has quite a bunch of different like trim levels.
Yeah.
And I know that there's one where they may come with like more aggressive tires.
Yeah, it's like an R or a Rally or something maybe. I don't remember. It's been a while.
Either way, yours is not that.
Mine's not specifically the off-road one. I think it's like the sport one.
So it's kind of more aimed towards touring from its design, but it really works well as an adventure bike.
It's comfortable. It's a great motorcycle. It has good power. Yeah. So we'll get into more of that, some of those specifics later, but let's get on to the next. What do we have next on the list here?
So we kind of covered why the adventure bike. Maybe we could just kind of combine them into what is your favorite motorcycle for adventure riding? I think we've kind of covered that a little bit, but is yours the Multistrada?
I think if I had to just pick one bike forever and I could only choose one street bike for all of eternity, for me, it would be the Multistrada. I've ridden Backer's Tiger. It's a great bike. It leans a little bit to the sport bike side for me. Backer's really tall and he muscles it around. I haven't ridden one of the BMWs. I had a 990 Adventure. It's fantastic.
It's
It's it's the grandfather of this whole category. It's amazing, but it's brutal. It's a little like the power's a little brutal
Trust
to me.
I know.
Yeah, Arlo crashed it. I told him exactly
What to look
not
out
to
for,
do, and he crashed it.
Crashing it. So.
But anyways, and I crash all of my bikes. So if you ever want to buy one of my motorcycles and you're wondering, has this bike ever been laid over? The answer is almost every time that I ride it. But anyways, the 990 is great. The DNA is perfect. The only downside is the power for me was brutal. It was like a light switch. Like when you're in a corner and it's slippery or you're on gravel or whatever, like the throttle is either on or off. And that may just be the beginning of fuel injection.
Right.
I'm not sure.
They don't have it like
it's a little
kinda
racy.
tamed.
Yeah. So I ended up just blowing off the back tire. I couldn't keep them for more than a few hundred miles. I think the maximum I got out of a tire was like 800 miles.
Goodness.
So I haven't rode the BMW. I would love to.
Same.
I've rode a few different bikes, KLR, dual sports, KTMs. For me, the Multistrada, if I had to pick one bike forever, it's the Multistrada. For anything dirt, gravel, or whatever, it's the T7. And the T7 is the KTM 990, but they fixed everything that's wrong with the 990. The 990 is heavily weighted in the front with no weight on the rear. The power's brutal. The T7's exactly the same, but the power's electric smooth. The reliability is bulletproof. Yeah, they fixed the balance issue. It's just to me, it was the updated 990 and it cost less. I sold my old one with 40,000 miles or something for $6,000 and bought a new one for $10,000 with 200 miles on it. It was like a no-brainer.
Yep.
It fixed all of my issues. So for like any dirt or off-road, the more dirt, and when I adventure ride, I want to hit the dirt roads. So the T7 would be my favorite adventure bike.
All-around pick. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. It's a toss-up between those. But I've been lucky enough to ride a bunch of different bikes and then come up with my two favorite, and they're cheap, and I'm able to have both of them. So
there you go. I would say for me, and I don't have as much riding experience as you, but for me, I leaned towards the 890 Adventure R purely for the creature comforts, such as the electronic riding aids.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of those because they've absolutely saved my butt a few times. And then there's times where, you forget to turn your ABS off and you're in the ditch.
Dangerous.
So I think that's a double-edged sword, but I did like the fact that the 890 has cruise control. If I want to take it for a little bit longer rides. It was the only thing that was available when I bought the bike because this was during kind of that post-COVID craziness, or maybe even it was technically in COVID eras, beginning of last year. So beginning of 2022 is when I bought that bike and just loved it. I mean, the power is unbelievable, but you can choose those different riding modes and really tame that thing down if you do need to. So that's been a really fun bike. I feel like it can pretty much do anything, except I wouldn't want to do long distance stuff. And I do have the Harley Pan America Special for that.
Exactly.
But totally different bike, and when I was getting back into motorcycling 2.5 years ago, I bought the Pan America, because the guy at the Honda dealership pissed me off because he was like trying to size me up, and it was like, all right, dude, I get it. So went to Harley, and Harley does this exceptionally well. Their sales, I mean, they roll out the red carpet. Maybe people who are listening haven't bought from a Harley dealer before, but they're very, very good at sales. and they're very good about making everyone feel welcome, regardless of your riding experience or, hey, maybe you've taken a break or you haven't. I asked the gal I bought the bike from, I was like, hey, can I take it for a test ride? And she's absolutely, every bike we have is available for a test ride.
Yeah.
So, there's some hoops you do have to jump through, but I was expecting that buying the Africa Twin, which is what I was originally after. So, but the Pan America, such a good like touring bike that you could take off road if you wanted to. I know there's a lot of people that do. For me, having the 890 and the Pan America, probably going to save the Pan America for just touring. I don't foresee myself really taking it off road. It's just a heavy bike.
Yeah, it's heavy. I think that's the one downside.
Yeah, but it's kind of like you can't have it all. There's no all around bike. It's like really good for touring, or it lacks in some other areas. So I feel like it's just a good touring bike. But so I lean more towards the 890, but every time I ride either your T7 or I've ridden my other friend's T7 now, I really like that bike. Yes, it's a lot less horsepower than the 890, but to be honest with you, I don't need it.
Yeah. It's usable power.
Right.
Like to me, it feels like from like 1,000 RPM to 11,000 RPM, it's the same horsepower. Right. For me, I like electric smooth power, and it does.
And it's just dead nuts reliable. I mean, there's so many different things that you could argue with that bike. But when I rode it, I did the Tennessee Dirt Devil, what was that, 3 weeks ago? Just a fun bike. And I almost didn't want to give it back to him because he wanted to ride the 890, and he's like, this thing is ridiculous. I'm like, I know. And I'm like, this bike is really nice, man.
Yeah.
So I think it just depends on what you're after. And he has the Atlas throttle lock to kind of give him somewhat of a cruise control if he needs to, shake his hand out on the right side or something. But there are things with the 890 that I'm like, gosh, the tech is
once you get used to it, it's hard to give it up.
Yeah, quick shifter. I mean, all the things, all things tech, which I'm obviously into. The 890 is really good at it. Yeah. So. Rally mode, you're able to select the slippage.
It's the opposite. Like if I ride a bike, when I first got the multi-strut, I thought it was broken because I hit a set of train tracks and I thought, oh, this will be fun. I can spin it up or whatever. And it cut out, it bogged down. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I bought a broken Italian bike with electrical problems that when I hit a big set of train tracks and I think I'm going to wheelie it or jump it or something, it's broken. And then I figured out, oh, it has traction control. So for me, I have to disable that stuff because I get it. It's dangerous.
Totally different riding styles. And I think it just depends on
it depends what you like and what you're into. So it's but if I was to ride home in the rain on a day and I'm just commuting or taking it to work, I turn it on because I think it's great. But otherwise, that stuff to me,
it's a turn off for you.
It scares me. Like I go into a turn and the brakes don't work, and I'm like, what do I do?
On? Yeah.
So
I wish that the Tenere had a switch that you could just leave the ABS off or on. But
on the 990, I was able to pull a fuse and just completely disable the ABS.
Oh,
altogether.
I know.
Yeah.
Remember, that's what locked up on me.
I warned you. I said, hey, the back's really light. Be careful. It's a little violent on the power and the back's light, so be careful. And then 10 minutes later, Arlo was flying through the air with a 30-foot black mark behind him.
I almost saved it, but I didn't. So, and then it's funny because obviously riding motorcycles is inherently dangerous, but I've crashed 2 adventure bikes already, and it's like you knock on wood, it's been really good to me because they've been in somewhat low speed, and like one was in a cornfield, I've walked away from it, so I've been lucky, but yeah, electronic aids for me are a must because there's times where I'm riding. I think it's who you're riding with. Is if you're following a group, and that 890 has some pretty wild power curve too. Mm-hmm. And we were on a gravel road and turning left, and I was opening it up because you guys were opening it up, right? And the back tire, I was in rally mode on that thing, which allows for an adjustable amount of slippage, probably the best way to put it. And I come out of there and it started to just spin out on me because I was turning
dirt tracking.
and it finally like said, "Oh, that's too much," and dialed it back. And I would have absolutely spun out right there. So
Yeah.
I think it just depends. I'm obviously painting myself to be the best motorcycle rider on this show so far. So
Definitely.
I'll take that trophy. But
Have you ridden a Backer's Tiger?
I did. Rode it one time. We'll have Backer on this show. I know he'll want to join us, but I rode it and I think a lot of stuff was broken on it.
It's a little worn out. But it's a 3-cylinder. Is it a 4-cylinder or a 3-cylinder? It's a little more sport bikey.
It sounds more like
or
850.
Yeah, I think so. One of those. But you sit down in it
Yes.
more, and he has tall bars and risers and stuff on it. For me, the power is pretty good. It's a little usable. It's a little more leaning towards the sport bike, and Backer raced crotch rockets. So for him, this is like a natural move into a sport bike, and it was a bike that he stumbled across and it worked out, and it suits him perfectly. And he does stuff on it. I've seen him ride it through a river, and it's a sport bike. And it's amazing. It's cool. What he does with it, I couldn't do because I'm physically not big enough.
He's a big dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, he for sure manhandles that thing. So
Yeah. For the yours is the 890R.
it is Adventure. Yep.
I like your bike. It's less violent than the 990. I like bikes that don't stall. Like you can chug them down to like no RPM at all. Yep. So the Tenere engine is it's like a Taiwan Japanese commuter bike engine. It's unbelievably mellow. It probably has low compression. It could make 100 horsepower, but it doesn't because they have it so
dialed back.
Yeah, it's so mild. The 890 is a little more like you can tell it has higher compression. It stalls easier. It has less rotating mass. It's a lot more racy, and that's super fun. But I prefer smooth electric usable power. I like the 890. The geometry is a little weird for me. I like to be like up on a tall bike over the top, riding over the top of it. And the 890, you're a little bit more like in it, like closer to the ground maybe. Where the 890 is more of a motorcycle and the T7's more like a dirt bike or a rally bike. Like you stand up over the top of it, and that's how you ride it. And that's how I like to ride. So the 890, it's an amazing bike, but for some reason it doesn't jive well with my riding.
Sure.
Yeah. But otherwise, it's unbelievable.
Here, I was thinking I was going to be able to trade you my 890 for the Tenere.
And the other thing is the build. In my opinion, the Tenere is amazing, but it's kind of like a in-between bike. Like it's not a play bike, but it's not like if you're looking at the Yamaha, it's not like a TTR, and it's not a YZ. The YZ is strong, everything's tough. You could drop it off the top of your house and nothing's gonna break. It's somewhere in between. Like the suspension's it's not the nicest, best stuff, but it's not super Taiwan.
It was a sub $10,000 bike brand.
But that's the other thing.
The
price.
Now they've gone up quite a bit, or not quite a bit, but what, $800 probably?
Something like that. But yeah, so it's an in-between quality.
Like,
whereas the KTM is like, they say it's race ready, like it's engineered, it's tough, everything fits together perfectly. Like when it comes to the quality of the parts and the build, the 890 is probably on a different level.
Well, and they're priced differently too, though.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I like it. I think this was a great first episode. I think we go ahead and shut it off, but maybe we could ask the listeners and watchers of this pilot to say, hey, what do you want us to talk about? We have motorcycle backgrounds as far as like different riding, different styles of bikes. So maybe throw some things at us. I know one thing I'd like to talk about is what sort of rides do you want to take? Whether that be in the immediate future, long distance future. We had, you remember Randy?
Yeah.
On that huge ride he just went to Alaska.
Yeah.
He would be someone who would actually be great to interview on this podcast because we could talk to him. So a guy that we know rode his motorcycle from Indiana to Prudhoe Bay, Alaska. I mean, the furthest northern point of Alaska and back. I mean, he had some pictures of like hail falling on them and just crazy stuff. So maybe we'll get that going. But
I think we should get us all together and talk about this because it's so funny how we're all completely different in this.
Yeah, that sounds painful.
I don't want to do that. Like, I like riding my motorcycle, but I don't want to ride it for 30 days. I want to ride Saturday and Sunday and go back to my normal
Go back to work on Monday. Yeah. That's hilarious. Me, I'm like, I'll take the 30 days.
Exactly.
Say less. So, all right. Thanks, everyone.